something odd about Macaque is the fact that he has shadow powers. It's odd because Monkie Kid is based on Journey to the West, and Macaque doesn't have shadow powers in Journey to the West. In fact, Macaque's whole thing in Journey to the West is that he looks the exact same as Monkey King and has the same powers as him. So what's with the shadow powers? Does he just have them, or is there a reason he has them? Well, some of the creators of the show talked a bit about Macaque in this interview, and what they said seemed to indicate that there is a reason they gave Macaque shadow powers. And in Season 5, the 9-headed demon has everyone but MK trapped, and MK is trying to sacrifice himself. Macaque is also trapped by the 9-headed demon's power, but he manages to break free and completely destabilize the 9-headed demon's power. The 9-headed demon then goes after Macaque and MK, and he says this.
That was quite a trick. That power. Who gave that to you? Who'd you make a deal with? A deal? It doesn't matter.
He asks Macaque if he got his powers from a deal. Now, Macaque does seem a little confused at this. Maybe he is just being secretive or defensive, but it is also possible that he made a deal and doesn't remember it. I say this because, over the course of the series, there is a lot of evidence indicating that characters' memories have been messed with. I talk about this a lot in this video, but I'm pretty sure that Pigsy, Sandy, and Tang are the original pilgrims, but their memories have been messed with. There's a scene in Season 2 where Huntsman beats up a bunch of monkeys, and we briefly see Sandy have a bunch of flashbacks, including this one with Zubage, and it is clearly Zubage based on the clothing. And in Season 3, we see a flashback where the pilgrims are at this place, and then we get this scene later on.
Does anyone else feel like...
We've been here before? Yeah, that's weird, right? But I know I haven't.
Me neither. And yet this place feels so familiar.
There is clearly something going on with the characters' memories, and the 9-headed demon actually says this.
Wukong, come on! We are old enemies! We're old friends, too. You just don't remember.
I know that this could simply refer to a previous cycle, but the way the scene plays out makes me think it's something else. So, if various characters' memories have been messed with, it could be that Macaque made a deal to get his shadow powers, but his memory of that was erased. And David Breen, who is a story editor and co-producer on Monkey Kid, was asked if Macaque was killed by Sun Wukong and then resurrected by Lady Bone Demon. And David Breen replied, saying that that's how Macaque thinks it went down, but there is always more to the journey. So, it seems like Macaque's memories have definitely been messed with. But if Macaque made a deal to get his shadow powers, who did he make a deal with? Well, while there aren't any shadow demons in Journey to the West, there is one character who is associated with darkness. The Python Demon, who appears in Volume 3, Chapter 67. When the Python Demon comes, the wind comes with it and it departs with the fog. Additionally, when it comes, it is said, massive black clouds cover the starry sky, and that lamps and lights fade as the whole earth grew dark. Essentially, the Python Demon causes wind, darkness, fog, and black clouds. I can easily see this being interpreted or adapted as shadows, especially as Monkey Kid does have a history of adapting the Journey to the West villains to not be 100% the same as they were in the book. For example, In the original book, Lady Bone Demon's only goal is to eat the monk's flesh, and Spider Queen isn't even in the original book, although she is clearly inspired by the 7 Spider Sister demons. So, it is not a big stretch to think that the Python demon who causes darkness and black clouds would be adapted into a shadow demon in Monkey Kid. And there is plenty of other evidence that Macaque made a deal with the Python demon. In quite a few of the Monkey Kid Season 3 sets, we see these red monkeys. According to the sets, these are Macaque's shadow clones. However, in Season 1, we already saw what Macaque's shadow clones look like, and the clones in the show and the clones in the sets look nothing alike. They are not even the same colors. The clones in the show are purple/magenta, while the clones in the Season 3 sets are bright red. Then, this initial concept art for Season 3 was released. Here we see Macaque at the top, and we see some of his shadow clones on the sides. Despite Macaque's powers always being purple or purple-pink themed in the show, in this concept art, he is emulating a red aura, and his clones are red in both this concept art as well as in the Season 3 sets. And then this Season 3 concept art of Macaque was also released. Again, his powers were red themed and he's got red shadow monkeys. So clearly there was something significant planned for Macaque in Season 3 to cause such a drastic color palette shift and change to the clones. Whatever was planned for Macaque in Season 3 was obviously cut out, possibly because they couldn't fit it in. But at the very end of Season 5, we see Macaque's purple powers switch to a red-orange color. Now, guess what demon is red in Journey to the West? That's right, the Python demon is a giant red snake, and it is pretty much the only red demon. Also, the faces of Macaque's shadow clones look kind of similar to a snake head or skull. Additionally, the Python demon is described as having scarlet clouds covering his body. And what do you know? These patterns on the front and back of the clone minifigures look an awful lot like red or scarlet clouds. And then, in Season 2, we see Macaque wearing this robe, and on it are red clouds. Also, the Python demon's eyes are described as lanterns, and Macaque had a lantern which was linked to his shadow powers. There is also something else that indicates that Macaque made a deal, and that his shadow powers were not originally his. So, Macaque's face marking is very weirdly shaped. It doesn't look like your typical monkey face marking. It is spiky and pointed and red. This is a really odd design choice, especially as Macaque is obviously a macaque, but there are no macaque species that look like this. So, what if Macaque's face marking used to look more like Sun Wukong's? And in the Flower Fruit Mountain set, Macaque's minifigure face has 2 sides, with 2 very different face markings. On one side, he has the face marking he has in the show, and on the other side, he has one that is lighter and much more similar in shape to Sun Wukong's face marking. While you may be thinking that maybe they misprinted Sun Wukong's face marking onto Macaque's face, you actually can see that this face marking does in fact have little spikes. And then, in this more recent set, his face marking is the right color, but it is still closer to the shape of Sun Wukong's. And then, in the Season 3 sets, we can see Macaque's face marking has grown larger and spikier. As I mentioned, Macaque's whole colour scheme switched in the Season 3 sets, in the Season 3 concept art, and for real at the end of Season 5. If this is all related to a deal he made to get his powers, then his face marking growing is also related to this. If you line up all the faces, you can see the progression of how Macaque's face marking would have grown. So, maybe Macaque's face marking was originally the same as Sun Wukong's, but because of the Python Demon's influence, it started turning red and grew spiky. And what is crazier is that we already know for a fact that demonic influence can change monkey face markings. When Sun Wukong got possessed by Lady Bone Demon, his face marking turned blue. Now, what is interesting is that Macaque's powers are clearly related to the chaos. When Macaque's powers change, we see that they look exactly the same as the nine-headed demon's powers, which look the same as the power crackles in the chaos. Macaque also blasts the nine-headed demon, and somehow he uses his powers to disrupt and block the nine-headed demon's chaos powers.
What did you do? You cut me off from the chaos. I can't feel it. What did you do?
So, whoever gave Macaque his powers has something to do with the chaos. So, if the Python Demon gave Macaque his powers, then the Python Demon must have something to do with the chaos. Now, the nine-headed demon told this whole little story about himself, where some people lived in the cave, but one of them got out and experienced the sun. The cave in this story seems to represent the world all the characters live in, and he said that the sun in his story represents the chaos. But I think that the nine-headed demon and these other people were always connected to the chaos. You could assume that the nine-headed demon only got chaos powers after he went out into the chaos, but I think that he always had them. I don't think these people in the cave were supposed to represent all the people in the world. Otherwise, what the nine-headed demon said wouldn't make sense. He said that they didn't listen to him, and that they called him monster. This sounds more like he talked to a small group of people versus the whole world. And, again, in his story, the sun seems to represent the chaos, and the nine-headed demon said that they knew it was there.
People in a cave, never seeing the sun, feeling its warmth. But they knew it was out there, and they feared it.
But all the people in the world clearly do not know that the chaos is out there. And the nine-headed demon specifically says that he is a creature from the chaos beyond, not a creature who had been to the chaos beyond, or a creature who had powers from there, but a creature from the chaos beyond. This is why I think it makes more sense for the nine-headed demon to be talking about a group of people who were already innately connected to the chaos, who possibly originally came from it. How could he have possibly known about the chaos and found it if he wasn't already connected to it? And the nine-headed demon asks Macaque who he got his power from, and who he made a deal with. It definitely seems like the nine-headed demon recognizes Macaque's power as being related to the chaos. But the nine-headed demon must know of other people with chaos-related powers, because otherwise, why would he ask Macaque if he made a deal with someone? If the nine-headed demon got his powers from going into the chaos, he wouldn't have thought Macaque made a deal. He would have thought that Macaque also went into the chaos. So, I think that the nine-headed demon and these other guys were already connected to the chaos. Hence why he said that they knew the chaos was out there. So, what if one of these other people, who had chaos powers, is who Macaque made a deal with? And what is super interesting about these people is that the nine-headed demon refers to them as her little people.
He couldn't abandon them. Her little people.
And here we see Nuwa wrapped around the cave. You might think that the 9-headed demon said they were her little people because Nuwa created all people. However, Nuwa specifically created humans in Chinese mythology, and one version of the myth says she also created animals. And this is affirmed in Monkey Kid by Sun Wukong.
She made the original monkeys. Also humans.
My point is, I couldn't find anything about Nuwa creating demons, but she clearly created the 9-headed demon since he was one of the people in the cave and was included in the her little people comment. So, again, what if all the people in this cave do not represent all the people in the world, but instead a specific group of people that Nuwa made? Nuwa has a snake tail, and then the 9-headed demon is clearly snake-themed with snake hair and scales. So there's a connection. And what is interesting is that the 9-headed demon isn't explicitly snake-themed in the book Journey to the West. But the writers have also combined his character with Xiangliu, a 9-headed snake demon in Chinese mythology. And part of the reason they did this is clearly because Xiangliu had a part in breaking down one of the 8 pillars in Chinese mythology, the pillar Nuwa had to fix. Anyway, my point is, what if Nuwa specially made all these people to be somewhat like herself? And that is why the 9-headed demon is snakish like her. So, the other 4 could also be snake-related. And look, when the 9-headed demon goes into the chaos, there is a temple there. A snake-themed temple. So, if these other 4 people are also snake people, then one of them has to be the Python demon, because there are not many snake people in Journey to the West. These are the only ones I could find. Also, there were 5 people in the cave, including the 9-headed demon, and there were 5 stones. What if these 5, including the 9-headed demon and the Python demon, were the original guardians of the stones? It would make sense for Nuwa to specifically make guardians for the stones. And if there were previous cycles before this world, then perhaps they were guardians in a previous cycle, but they could only be guardians for one cycle. And hey, this stone matches to the 9-headed demon, and this red one would match to the Python demon. Interestingly enough, because the sky and world is breaking, we see that the previous guardians fade away, but no one else was fading away. This seems to indicate that them fading away has something to do with them being guardians of the stones. And then, the 9-headed demon also starts fading away, just like the guardians. However, again, none of the other characters are fading away like this. And Macaque asked the 9-headed demon what was happening with him, why he was fading away.
What's happening to you? The chaos is bleeding into the world. I told you. No matter what, I'm going back to where I belong.
The 9-headed demon saying this indicates that him fading has to do with him having a connection to the chaos. But if the guardians were also fading, then they may have also been related to the chaos. So the guardians faded, but no one else. And then the 9-headed demon faded, but no one else. I definitely think that there's a good chance that the 9-headed demon used to be a guardian, that all guardians were connected to the chaos, and that the 9-headed demon and the 4 other people in the cave were guardians, and that they were all snake-related. Anyway, like I said, I think that Macaque made a deal with the Python demon a long while ago, which is linked to how his powers changed colors at the end of Season 5. But why did his powers change colors at that time? Well, the 9-headed demon said this.
It means he's winning. You just opened the cage.
And then, after that, Macaque's powers changed colors. I don't think that the 9-headed demon was talking about the Python demon, because A, My theory is that the Python Demon is one of the 4 that stayed behind and didn't go into the chaos, even though they are connected to the chaos. And B, if this guy that the 9-headed demon is talking about has been trapped, it is not super likely that he was able to make a deal with Macaque. But when the 9-headed demon said that MK just opened the cage, I think this means that MK let the chaos in. Nuwa said that she saw people could not survive the chaos, so she built the pillar and made the cycle to protect them. But there is no pillar anymore. There is no cycle anymore. If the pillar and the cycles were made to keep the chaos out, well, now that they are gone, the chaos is probably able to get in. So the chaos is coming in, and I guess there is some evil guy out there who was locked out of the world and now he can come in too. But now that the chaos is coming in, it is reacting to Macaque's powers because his powers were given to him by someone connected to the chaos. To summarize, the 9-headed demon asked Macaque if he made a deal to get his powers. As Macaque has shadow powers, it would make sense for him to have made a deal with some sort of shadow demon, and, in Journey to the West, the Python Demon is the closest there is to a shadow demon, as it causes wind, darkness, fog, and black clouds. And, in the Season 3 sets, Macaque has red clones, and in 2 Season 3 concept images, Macaque and his powers are red. Clearly, something was planned for Season 3 where Macaque's powers would switch from purple and magenta to red. Whatever was planned wasn't used for Season 3, but it seems the writers are now using it because, at the end of Season 5, Macaque's powers switch to a red-orange color. And the Python Demon is a giant red snake, pretty much the only red demon in Journey to the West. Furthering the connection is how the Python Demon is described as having scarlet clouds covering his body, and Macaque's shadow clones in the sets have red clouds on them, and Macaque wears a cloak with red clouds on it in Season 2. Of course, Macaque's powers seem to be related to the chaos, so he must have made a deal with someone connected to the chaos. And there is a snake-themed temple at the entrance to the chaos, so even more evidence that Macaque made a deal with the Python Demon. Furthermore, the 9-headed demon told the story about him and some other people in a cave. Based on his wording, it seems that he and these people had some sort of connection to the chaos, that they somehow originally came from the chaos. So maybe Macaque made a deal with one of the other 4 people who could be the Python Demon, especially as I think all the people here were probably snake-themed, because the 9-headed demon says that they are Nuwa's little people, which makes me think that Nuwa created these 5 people to be like her, so snake-themed. And maybe she created these 5 people to be the previous guardians of the stones, which would explain why the 9-headed demon started to fade away like the current guardians. Feel free to like and subscribe.